In what has to be the most tone-deaf, mind-boggling public relations move in the entire history of reality television, a convicted felon currently sitting in a Texas federal prison for the worst crimes imaginable has decided that he is the perfect character witness. Yes, you heard that right. Josh Duggar, who is currently serving a 12-and-a-half-year sentence for possessing child sexual abuse material, actually thinks he is the right person to vouch for his brother Joseph's innocence. You genuinely cannot script this level of hypocrisy. It is the ultimate self-own. As the Duggar family faces yet another devastating scandal with Joseph's shocking arrest, the one person who absolutely needed to stay silent decided to speak up. Josh Duggar is trying to throw his younger brother a lifeline from behind bars, and in doing so, he might have just hammered the final nail into Joseph's coffin. Before we dive into the dark, twisted psychology behind this abuser's alliance and the exclusive insider theories about what is really happening behind the closed doors of the Duggar compound, you need to do me a quick favor. If you are as disgusted and fascinated by this ongoing family saga as I am, hit that like button right now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single update in this case. We are exposing the truth that TLC and Jim Bob tried to bury for over a decade, and your support helps push these videos to the people who need to see them. Drop a comment below right now with your initial reaction. Did you ever see this coming from Joseph? Subscribe, like, and let's get into the absolute madness of this situation. To truly understand how insane it is that Josh Duggar is speaking out about false accusations and sensationalized fiction, we have to travel back in time to the era when the Duggar family was untouchable. Before the police reports leaked, before the federal raids, and before the mugshots, there was the golden era of 19 kids and counting. Back before 2015, Josh was Jim Bob's ultimate masterpiece. He was the golden boy. Jim Bob had groomed his eldest son to be the political face of the entire fundamentalist movement. Josh was rubbing elbows with politicians in Washington, D.C., working a high-profile job at the Family Research Council, and parading around as the premier example of Jim Bob and Michelle's supposedly flawless, God-honoring parenting. And right there in the background, living entirely in his older brother's shadow, was Joseph. Joseph was the quiet one. He was the loyal, obedient, unassuming brother who never rocked the boat. If Josh was the loud, arrogant face of the franchise, Joseph was the reliable worker bee. Fans of the show barely noticed him because he was just so seemingly normal. He was the one you never had to worry about. He courted Kendra, he followed the rules, he smiled for the cameras, and he nodded along to every word his father and his older brother said. According to exclusive insider theories that have been circulating among those close to the family, Joseph idolized Josh during those early years. The theory goes that Joseph watched how Josh operated, how Josh commanded respect, how Josh hid his dark secrets behind a shiny veneer of religious purity, and most importantly, how the family instantly closed ranks to protect the golden boy whenever trouble brewed. Joseph was taking notes. Then came 2015. The year the facade shattered into a million pieces. The first massive cracks in the Duggar Foundation appeared when a sealed police report was leaked to the public, detailing Josh's horrific teenage crimes against his own sisters and a babysitter. The entire world suddenly saw the truth. The Duggars were not this perfectly wholesome, pure family. They were a family that prioritized protecting an abuser over seeking justice for the victims. Remember how Jim Bob and Michelle reacted? They didn't isolate Josh. They didn't cast him out. Instead, they went on national television, sitting down with Megyn Kelly to play damage control. They minimized his actions as the mistakes of a curious teenager. They forced the victims, Jill and Jessa, to go on camera and essentially forgive their abuser in front of millions of viewers to save the family's lucrative TLC television show. Insider reports from that chaotic time suggest that behind the scenes, the Duggar compound was in absolute panic mode. But the lesson taught to the younger boys, including Joseph, was incredibly toxic. The subliminal message broadcasted to every Duggar son was clear. The family name is more important than the truth. And if you get caught doing something unthinkable, your parents will move heaven and earth to sweep it under the rug. You will be protected. The girls will be silenced, and the show will go on. And that terrifying lesson leads us directly to the catalyst of the current nightmare. Fast forward past the cancellation of the show, past Josh's federal arrest and conviction, to a day that has completely blindsided the internet. Joseph Duggar gets arrested. And not just for any minor infraction. He is facing charges for a 2020 incident in Panama City Beach, Florida, that allegedly involved a 9-year-old girl. Think about the timeline here. This is 2020. This is years after Josh's initial scandals broke the family apart. This is a time when the Duggar family was supposedly under a microscope, hyper-vigilant, and swearing up and down to their remaining fans that the predatory behaviors of the past died with Josh's exile from public life. They promised us that Josh was an isolated incident, an anomaly, a single bad apple in a bushel of righteous, well-raised children. But Joseph's arrest shatters that lie completely. The details of the allegations mirror the exact predatory behaviors of his older brother. The grooming, the inappropriate touching, the taking advantage of a vulnerable situation during a family vacation. It is like reading a carbon copy of the nightmare that started it all. Insider theories are now suggesting that the deeply ingrained, toxic purity culture of the Duggar household didn't just fail to stop abuse, it actively created an environment where multiple abusers could thrive in secret. How could this happen again? How could Joseph, the supposedly quiet and steadfast brother, allegedly commit these acts in 2020? There are explosive rumors floating around that the family might have had suspicions for years. An exclusive insider theory posits that Jim Bob may have noticed red flags with Joseph long before the police were ever involved, but chose the exact same strategy he used with Josh: handle it in-house, pray it away, and keep the authorities out of it. We have to ask ourselves, was the 2020 Panama City Beach incident an isolated mistake? Or was it the culmination of years of hidden behavior that the family willfully ignored to protect their crumbling empire? Which brings us back to the absolute hubris of Josh Duggar. You would think that a man sitting in federal prison for downloading and possessing the most heinous material imaginable would have the basic common sense to keep his mouth shut. You would think that knowing his own horrifying track record, he would realize that his endorsement is a literal kiss of death. But sociopathic arrogance doesn't just turn off when you put on a prison jumpsuit. Josh, rotting in a federal cell at FCI Segoville, actually thinks his word still holds weight. According to insider reports from within the prison system, Josh has been closely monitoring the news of his brother's downfall. These reports suggest that Josh still views himself as the patriarch in waiting, the smartest guy in the room who can spin any narrative. He assumes that the public is just as gullible today as they were in 2010. He thinks that if he just says the magic words, persecution, false accusations, media witch hunt, the loyal fundamentalist fan base will rally behind Joseph. He assumes they will buy into the tired, exhausted narrative that the Duggars are just a persecuted Christian family under attack by a secular world that hates their faith. So, Josh makes his move. He directs his lawyer to run straight to the British tabloids, a calculated, deliberate leak to the Daily Mail. His attorney releases an official statement claiming that Josh is deeply saddened by Joseph's arrest and calls the allegations false. The statement literally says that Josh understands the stigma of being accused and that he lives with the painful reality of how false accusations can destroy a life. He claims to understand how targeting a person for publicity can twist the truth into sensationalized fiction. Let that sink in for a moment. Josh Duggar, the man who was convicted by a jury of his peers, whose defense involved blaming a phantom French hacker, whose own computer logs and passwords completely destroyed his pathetic alibi, is claiming that he understands false accusations. He is using his own deeply proven, federally convicted crimes as a parallel to defend Joseph. It is a level of psychological delusion that belongs in a textbook. But let's look at the exclusive theories about why Josh really released this statement. Insider reports suggest this wasn't just about brotherly love. Some sources speculate that Josh is using Joseph's case to plant seeds of doubt about his own conviction. By grouping himself and Joseph together as victims of a media witch hunt, Josh is trying to rewrite history. He wants the narrative to be that the government is just picking off Duggar men one by one because of their religious beliefs. It is a desperate, pathetic attempt to maintain relevance and control from inside a cage. Another wild insider theory suggests that Josh's statement was actually a rogue move that absolutely infuriated Jim Bob. Think about it from Jim Bob's perspective. He is currently spending a fortune on lawyers, trying to figure out how to navigate Joseph's arrest and Kendra's subsequent mysterious charges. He is trying to keep the remaining family members in line. The absolute last thing Jim Bob needs right now is the ghost of his greatest failure rearing its ugly head in the international press. Word on the street is that when Jim Bob saw Josh's statement in the Daily Mail, he hit the roof. By speaking out, Josh essentially linked his own undeniable guilt directly to Joseph. He reminded every single person on the internet that this family breeds predators. Instead of clearing Joseph's name, Josh's endorsement practically guarantees Joseph's guilt in the court of public opinion. The public reaction was immediate, visceral disgust. You look at the comments online, you look at the reaction videos, and everyone is saying the exact same thing. If Josh Duggar thinks you are innocent, you are definitely guilty. It is the worst possible character reference you could ever receive. It is like being endorsed by the devil himself. And look at the sheer contrast between Josh's reaction and the rest of the family. This is where the betrayal and the isolation truly come into focus. While Josh is forming this sickening abusers alliance, other siblings are finally breaking the cycle of toxic silence. We are seeing a massive fracture in the Duggar family tree. Jill and Derek released a statement expressing shock and heartbreak, firmly stating that they strongly condemn abuse and hope justice will be achieved for the innocent juvenile victim. Jason Duggar, who usually stays completely out of the drama, posted that he is disgusted by the allegations, calling the actions evil and unthinkable. Ginger and Jeremy addressed it on their podcast, calling it devastating. Even cousin Amy Duggar King, the long-standing black sheep who has been calling out the family's toxicity for years, stepped up to honor the bravery of the victim. These siblings are expressing heartbreak for the 9-year-old girl whose life was forever altered. They are aligning with the victim. But Josh? Josh immediately aligns himself with the accused. He doesn't say a word about the victim's pain. He doesn't say a word about the courage it takes to report abuse. His only concern is the stigma of being accused. This creates a terrifying dynamic. It isolates the two brothers from the rest of the traumatized family. It draws a thick, undeniable line in the sand. On one side, you have the siblings who are desperately trying to heal, trying to protect their own children, and trying to distance themselves from the generational curses of the IBLP cult. On the other side, you have Josh and Joseph, the fallen golden boys, huddled together in their delusion of persecution. The ultimate irony here is almost poetic. By trying to throw his younger brother a lifeline, Josh just reminded the entire world of his own horrific crimes. He effectively sunk Joseph's defense before it even began. Any lawyer worth their salt would tell Joseph to distance himself as far as humanly possible from Josh. But now, because Josh couldn't control his own narcissism, the two are forever linked in the public consciousness as the twin monsters of the Duggar family. We have to dive deeper into what this means for Joseph's actual legal defense. Insider theories from legal experts following the case suggest that Josh's public statement could actually be brought up indirectly if this goes to trial. Not as evidence of the crime, but as a narrative that the prosecution will easily exploit to show a pattern of family cover-ups. The prosecution can paint a picture of a family culture where abuse is denied, minimized, and publicly defended by known predators. If Joseph tries to take the stand and claim he is a God-fearing, innocent man, the shadow of his brother's exact same lies will hover over the entire courtroom. And what about Kendra? This is where the insider reports get incredibly dark. Kendra was arrested just days after Joseph on charges of endangering the welfare of a minor and false imprisonment. While the family spokesperson claims these charges are totally unrelated to Joseph's molestation case, nobody on the internet is buying that coincidence. An exclusive insider theory floating around the dark corners of the Duggar tracking communities suggests that Kendra might have found out about Joseph's actions and panicked. Did she try to silence the victim? Did she try to cover up the tracks to save her marriage and her reputation? Or is she another victim of the Duggar men's intense manipulation, forced into a situation where she had to choose between protecting a child and obeying her husband. The false imprisonment charge is the one that has everyone deeply disturbed. It implies a physical restraint, a desperate attempt to keep a secret from getting out the front door. If you piece together these insider reports with the timeline of events, a chilling picture emerges. We are looking at a scenario where Joseph, emboldened by the fact that his older brother got away with his teenage crimes for over a decade, felt invincible. He thought the rules of society did not apply to him because he was a Duggar. He thought that if anything went wrong, Jim Bob's money and the family's intense religious shielding would protect him. But the world has changed since 2015. The public is no longer blinded by the prairie dresses and the soft-spoken television interviews. Law enforcement is no longer turning a blind eye to the whispers coming out of Tontitown, Arkansas. Josh's attempt to manipulate the media from prison is the desperate gasp of a dying empire. He is watching his family's legacy burn to the ground, and instead of grabbing a bucket of water, he threw a gallon of gasoline on the fire. He took a localized family tragedy and turned it into an international spectacle of hypocrisy. Every single news outlet that covered Joseph's arrest immediately updated their headlines to include Josh's ridiculous defense. Josh ensured that Joseph wouldn't just be known as an accused predator, but as the protege of a convicted monster. This raises so many critical questions about the future of the Duggar family. Will Jim Bob finally issue a statement completely disowning both Josh and Joseph to save whatever tiny shred of influence he has left in his fundamentalist circle? Insider reports claim that Jim Bob is currently holding emergency meetings at the compound, trying to figure out which children are still loyal to him and which ones are preparing to turn state's evidence or sell their stories to the highest bidder. The paranoia inside that massive house must be suffocating. They're living in a true crime documentary that they can't turn off. It also makes you wonder about the other brothers, the ones who haven't spoken out yet, the ones who are still living under Jim Bob's roof or entirely dependent on his financial support. Are they looking at Joseph and Josh and realizing that the toxic culture they were raised in is a ticking time bomb? Or are they quietly seething, agreeing with Josh that this is all just an unfair attack on their lifestyle? The silence from certain corners of the family is deafening, and according to exclusive theories, that silence is entirely bought and paid for by Jim Bob's control over the family trust. Josh Duggar's defense of Joseph is not just a PR blunder. It is a profound psychological reveal. It shows that even after losing his freedom, his family, and his reputation, Josh still lacks a single ounce of genuine remorse or self-awareness. He still views women and children as collateral damage in the grand narrative of Duggar persecution. He still believes that the truth is whatever the Duggar men say it is. But the reality is, the walls are closing in. Joseph is facing serious prison time. Extradition to Florida means he will be facing a legal system outside of the friendly, corrupted confines of his hometown, where his father used to pull strings. He is entering a system that does not care how many Bible verses he can recite. And as Joseph sits in a jail cell waiting for his fate, he has to realize that the only person loudly standing in his corner is the one person whose endorsement guarantees his absolute destruction. It is a poetic, tragic, and entirely self-inflicted downfall. The golden boys of the IBLP movement, the pride and joy of Jim Bob and Michelle, both exposed, both disgraced, and both dragging each other down into the abyss. This is only the beginning of the unraveling. There are so many more layers to peel back, so many more insider reports about what Jim Bob is doing right now to silence the defectors, and so many questions about what Kendra's mysterious charges really mean for the case. We are going to dive into all of the explosive theories about the cover-up, the finances, and the devastating impact on the remaining Duggar siblings in the next segment. But right now, I need to hear from you. Is Josh Duggar's defense the final nail in Joseph's coffin? Should Josh have just kept his mouth shut and let his lawyers handle his own appeals? Or is there a darker, more calculated reason he spoke out? Let me know in the comments below right now. Let's get a discussion going because this case is moving fast, and the public reaction is going to play a massive role in how this family tries to spin their next move. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications so you are the first to know when the next huge update drops. Welcome back to the deep dive. And if you thought the sheer audacity of Josh Duggar's public statement was the peak of this horrific saga, you need to brace yourself, because the insider reports leaking out of Tontitown right now paint a picture of a family empire that is not just crumbling, but actively imploding from the inside out. We are talking about a level of psychological warfare, financial ruin, and sinister cover-ups that makes the original cancellation of 19 Kids and Counting look like a minor speed bump. The Duggar family is currently operating in a state of absolute unprecedented panic, and the desperate moves being made behind the closed doors of the compound are darker than anyone could have possibly imagined. Let us start by looking at the staggering financial reality of this new nightmare. According to exclusive theories circulating among those who closely monitor the Duggar family's real estate and business holdings, Jim Bob is allegedly bleeding cash at an astronomical rate. Think about it. When the TLC money dried up forever after Josh's federal conviction, the massive multi-million-dollar television revenue stream that funded this entire IBLP lifestyle vanished overnight. Jim Bob had already spent a reported fortune, easily millions of dollars, on the best federal defense attorneys money could buy for his golden boy Josh. That was a total loss. Josh is sitting in Segoville, the money is gone, and the family's mainstream marketability is dead and buried. Now, lightning has struck the exact same spot twice. Joseph's arrest, coupled with Kendra's shocking charges, means Jim Bob is once again looking down the barrel of massive, ruinous legal fees. Insider reports suggest that Jim Bob has been quietly trying to liquidate assets, quietly selling off parcels of land and commercial properties through shell LLCs, just to build up a massive, secret legal defense fund for Joseph. The theory is that Jim Bob views Joseph's legal battle not just as a fight for his son's freedom, but as the absolute final stand for the Duggar family name. If Joseph goes down, the entire 19 Kids and Counting legacy is permanently cemented as nothing more than a breeding ground for predators. But here is where the exclusive insider theories get truly disturbing. Word on the street is that Jim Bob is not just fighting the courts, he is fighting his own children. According to reports, the atmosphere inside the sprawling Duggar compound has devolved into a suffocating environment of intense paranoia and authoritarian lockdown. Rumors are swirling that Jim Bob has instituted mandatory emergency family meetings for anyone still living under his roof or relying on his payroll. These aren't your typical prayer circles. These are alleged interrogation sessions. The theory is that Jim Bob is terrified of another defector. He watched Jill walk away and write a tell-all book. He watched Ginger distance herself and expose the cult. He knows that the younger siblings have access to the internet. They see the public outrage, and they know the truth about what happened behind closed doors. Reports claim that Jim Bob has been demanding absolute loyalty, even going so far as to allegedly force the older children who still work for him to sign strict, ironclad non-disclosure agreements regarding anything related to Joseph and Kendra. The paranoia is so deep that there are whispers of phones being confiscated at the door of the big house, out of sheer terror that someone might be wearing a wire, recording a conversation, or secretly texting a journalist or law enforcement. They are living in a self-imposed prison of their own making, terrified that the next leak will come from inside the house. And this brings us to the most baffling, dark, and highly speculated piece of this entire puzzle: Kendra. Kendra Duggar's arrest alongside Joseph has sent shockwaves through the true crime and reality TV communities. The charges of endangering the welfare of a minor are horrific enough, but it is the false imprisonment charge that has sparked an absolute wildfire of exclusive theories and insider reports. False imprisonment implies a physical act of restraint. It implies keeping someone somewhere against their will. We have to ask ourselves, how does a supposedly meek, submissive, perfectly trained IBLP wife end up facing a charge that sounds like it was ripped from a kidnapping thriller? An exclusive, highly detailed theory has emerged from deep inside the Duggar tracking network, and if it is true, it changes the entire narrative of the 2020 Panama City Beach incident. The theory suggests that Kendra may have caught Joseph in the act, or at the very least, discovered undeniable evidence of his actions while they were in Florida. But instead of running to the police, instead of grabbing her children and fleeing, the intense, brainwashed programming of the Institute and Basic Life Principles kicked in. In that cult, the husband is the ultimate authority under God. To expose your husband is to invite spiritual ruin. To bring the law into family matters is considered the ultimate betrayal of the church. According to this chilling insider theory, Kendra panicked and attempted to manage the situation internally, just as Jim Bob and Michelle had modeled for the entire family back in the early 2000s. The reports speculate that the false imprisonment charge stems from a desperate, terrifying moment where Kendra allegedly tried to physically prevent the victim, or perhaps a witness who stumbled upon the scene, from leaving a hotel room or a vacation rental. Imagine the sheer horror of that scenario. A child or a panicked witness trying to escape, trying to run for help, and Kendra, driven by a twisted, cult-mandated desperation to protect her husband's reputation, block the door. She may have been trying to buy time to call Jim Bob, asking the patriarch what to do, trying to keep the police out of it until the family's notorious damage control machine could take over. If this exclusive theory holds any weight, it means Kendra is not just a passive bystander who turned a blind eye. It means she actively participated in attempting to silence the truth through physical intimidation. It paints a picture of a woman so deeply indoctrinated by toxic purity culture that she chose to act as a warden for her husband's monstrous secrets, rather than a protector of the innocent. This alleged attempt to handle things the Duggar way completely backfired, because they were not in the safe, easily manipulated confines of Tawnytown, Arkansas. They were in Panama City Beach, Florida. And this is a massive, critical detail that insider reports say is giving Jim Bob absolute nightmares. You see, back in Arkansas, Jim Bob Duggar was a big fish in a small pond. He had political connections. He knew the local sheriffs. He knew the judges. For decades, the Duggars operated under a protective umbrella of local clout, where favors could be called in and scandals could be quietly buried in the name of Christian forgiveness. But Florida law enforcement does not care about Jim Bob Duggar. The local prosecutors in Bay County, Florida, do not care how many episodes of 19 Kids and Counting aired on TLC. They are immune to the Duggar charm and the fundamentalist spin. Legal theories suggest that the Florida prosecutors are building a massive, airtight case, and they are planning to use the Duggar family's very own history against them. By extraditing Joseph to face these charges on Florida soil, they are stripping him of his home field advantage. The prosecutors know exactly who they are dealing with. They know about Josh. They know about the leaked police reports from 2015. They know the established pattern of this family prioritizing their public image over the safety of children. Reports from legal analysts following the case suggest that the state of Florida is going to go for the maximum possible penalty, looking to make an absolute example out of Joseph to prove that out-of-state celebrities cannot bring their predatory behaviors to Florida beaches and expect to walk away. And right in the middle of this high-stakes legal nightmare, we have the ghost of Josh Duggar, haunting the entire process from his federal cell. We have to unpack the unbelievable irony and the exclusive theories regarding Josh's public defense of Joseph, because it gets so much deeper and so much more twisted than just a simple press release. How did Josh even get this statement out so quickly? Insider reports from within the federal prison system suggest that Josh has been desperately trying to maintain his status as a shot caller from the inside. There are rampant rumors, but highly persistent, that Josh has had access to contraband cell phones, allowing him to bypass the heavily monitored prison email system to communicate directly with his legal team and outside fixers. The theory is that Josh spends his days obsessively reading news about his family, furious that the spotlight is no longer on him, and desperate to interject his own twisted narrative into the global conversation. But what Josh doesn't realize, or maybe his narcissism prevents him from seeing, is that his very public endorsement of Joseph has allegedly caused an absolute civil war between the two brothers' legal teams. Here is an exclusive theory that will completely blow your mind if it turns out to be true. While Josh is publicly aligning himself with Joseph, playing the "we are innocent persecuted victims" card, Joseph's incredibly expensive Florida defense attorneys are allegedly preparing to throw Josh directly under the bus. Think about it from a ruthless legal defense standpoint. Joseph is caught dead to rights. He has a mountain of evidence against him, a traumatized victim, and a wife facing charges of her own. What is his only possible outcome? To blame his upbringing. According to this explosive insider theory, Joseph's lawyers are secretly building a defense strategy that points the finger squarely at Josh and Jim Bob. They are allegedly preparing to argue that Joseph was raised in a highly isolated, deeply abusive cult environment, where his older brother, a known and convicted predator, was allowed to roam freely and groom the younger siblings. The strategy is to paint Joseph not as a mastermind, but as a deeply damaged product of Josh's influence, a tragic, broken byproduct of Jim Bob's refusal to protect his own children. Joseph's legal team wants to distance him from Josh as violently as possible. So when Josh releases a statement to the Daily Mail tying their fates together, claiming they are brothers in innocence, Joseph's lawyers must have been screaming at their desks. Josh essentially ruined months of careful legal maneuvering with a single arrogant quote. He tied an anvil around Joseph's neck right as Joseph was trying to swim to the surface. It is the ultimate betrayal disguised as a favor. Josh thinks he is saving Joseph, but in reality, reports suggest Joseph's camp is absolutely furious, viewing Josh's statement as a malicious, calculated move by a jealous older brother who wants to make sure that if he has to rot in a cell for 12 years, his younger brother is going to be sitting right there in the dark with him. It is a sickening crab-in-a-bucket mentality, playing out on a global stage. This internal warfare is supposedly tearing the remaining siblings apart. The silence from the middle tier of Duggar brothers, Jedediah, Jeremiah, James, and Jason, has been deafening. But according to insider reports, that silence is a smokescreen for a massive ideological civil war. Exclusive theories suggest that the brothers are rapidly dividing into two distinct camps. On one side, you have the absolute loyalists. These are the brothers who are entirely financially dependent on Jim Bob's real estate empire and construction businesses. Rumors suggest that these loyalists have bought completely into the narrative that the government is just targeting their family because they are high-profile Christians. They are allegedly circling the wagons, treating Joseph like a martyr, and viewing anyone who speaks out against him as a traitor to God. But on the other side, a quiet, terrifying realization is allegedly sweeping through the ranks of the other siblings. The theory is that some of the brothers and sisters who have children of their own are finally waking up to the horrifying reality that their childhood home was a house of horrors. Seeing Joseph arrested for the exact same sickening behaviors as Josh has shattered the delusion that Josh was just an isolated incident. Insider reports claim that several siblings have secretly packed up their families and severely limited their contact with Jim Bob and Michelle in the wake of this arrest. There are whispers that certain family members are quietly seeking out intense secular therapy, completely bypassing the useless, victim-blaming IBLP counseling that Jim Bob has forced down their throats for decades. The most explosive rumor of all involves Joanna. Joanna was historically one of the most fiercely loyal defenders of her family, deeply entrenched in the cult's teachings. But exclusive theories circulating in the wake of Joseph's arrest suggest that Joanna has had a massive, behind-the-scenes falling out with Jim Bob over this exact situation. The reports claim that Joanna, as a mother and as someone who lived through the trauma of the 2015 police report leak, drew a hard line in the sand. When Jim Bob allegedly tried to push the family to publicly support Joseph and Kendra, rumors say Joanna flatly refused, leading to a screaming match that ended with her essentially being cut off from the inner circle. If these reports are true, it means Jim Bob's iron grip is completely failing. The fear of public shame is no longer enough to keep the traumatized siblings silent. The cycle is breaking, but it is breaking in the most painful, chaotic way possible. And what about Michelle Duggar, the matriarch with the soft, whispery voice who told the world for years that her home was a haven of peace and righteousness? Insider reports suggest that Michelle has essentially become a ghost within her own home. The exclusive theory is that the reality of raising two sons who turned out to be accused and convicted predators has absolutely shattered whatever fragile mental defense mechanisms she had left. Rumors suggest she is rarely seen outside of her private quarters, completely overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the disaster, leaving Jim Bob to frantically try and steer a sinking ship entirely on his own. The facade of the happy, godly mother has been entirely stripped away, leaving only the grim reality of a woman who failed to protect her daughters and raised sons who became the monsters she warned them about in the secular world. The hypocrisy of Josh's statement defending Joseph is a masterclass in narcissistic delusion, but it is also a giant flashing neon sign pointing directly to the rot at the core of the IBLP ideology. This is a belief system that teaches men they are untouchable kings of their castles, completely immune to the rules of the outside world. Josh and Joseph were raised in an environment where accountability did not exist. If they sinned, they didn't go to jail, they went to a prayer camp. They didn't face a judge, they faced their father, who would simply sweep it under the rug and put them back on national television the very next day. They were programmed to believe they were invincible. But the real world has finally breached the walls of the Duggar compound. The feds took down Josh, and now the state of Florida is coming for Joseph. The protective bubble has burst, and the chaotic scramble to pick up the pieces is revealing the absolute worst in everyone involved. The insider reports of Jim Bob liquidating assets, Kendra allegedly trapping victims, Joseph's lawyers preparing to betray Josh, and the siblings fracturing into warring factions. It all points to an epic, inevitable collapse. And as we prepare to move into the final, most shocking revelations of this case, you have to ask yourself what the endgame looks like here. If Joseph is convicted, if Kendra is found guilty of false imprisonment, what happens to their children? What happens to the remaining minor children still living in that deeply toxic compound in Tontitown? We are about to uncover an exclusive, highly classified theory regarding a potential secret whistleblower. Someone from inside the very core of the Duggar family, who is allegedly already working with Florida State Police to bring the entire empire down once and for all. There are rumors of hidden digital backups, secret recordings, and a betrayal so deep it will make Josh's public statement look like child's play. The house of cards is falling, but the final crash is going to be deafening. You will not believe who reports are pointing to as the ultimate mole inside the Duggar family. We are going to expose the alleged secret deals being made with prosecutors, the unbelievable truth about where the TLC money really went, and the final, devastating fate of Joseph's legal defense. We have reached the absolute boiling point of this entire nightmare, and the insider reports about what is currently unfolding in the shadows of the Duggar family's collapse are so explosive that they threaten to wipe the entire 19 kids and counting legacy off the map forever. If you thought the family was just dealing with a unified legal defense, you are entirely mistaken. The Duggar compound is allegedly a house divided, held together only by fear, paranoia, and the desperate hoarding of whatever millions Jim Bob has left. But the walls are not just closing in, they are being actively dismantled from the inside. We are about to uncover an exclusive, highly classified theory regarding a potential secret whistleblower, a catastrophic financial shell game, and the ultimate devastating fate of Joseph Duggar's legal defense that Josh so arrogantly tried to manipulate from behind bars. To understand the sheer magnitude of the panic currently gripping Tontitown, you have to look at the rumors swirling around a secret mole operating within the absolute highest ranks of the Duggar family. According to exclusive insider theories that have sent shockwaves through the true crime community, Jim Bob's worst nightmare has allegedly come true. The theory suggests that for the past several years, an inner circle family member, someone who had unrestricted access to the compound, the family's private servers, and the closed-door meetings, has been quietly, methodically compiling a massive digital archive of evidence. We are talking about reports of hidden digital backups, encrypted hard drives, and secret audio recordings of Jim Bob's frantic damage control sessions. Think back to the time immediately following Josh's federal raid. The family was in chaos. Reports state that during that period, Jim Bob held mandatory, intensely private family meetings, where he allegedly laid down the law, dictating exactly what the family was allowed to say to the authorities and to the public. The exclusive theory now posits that someone sitting in that very room, absolutely disgusted by the generational cycle of abuse and cover-ups, hit record on their phone. This alleged whistleblower has reportedly been sitting on a gold mine of catastrophic evidence, waiting for the exact right moment to hand it over to the authorities. And when Joseph was arrested in Florida, mirroring the exact same predatory behaviors of his older brother, that was the catalyst. Who could this alleged mole be? Insider reports point to a few highly suspicious suspects within the family tree. Some theories suggest it is one of the middle children who completely scrubbed their internet presence and vanished from the public eye years ago, realizing the entire family structure was a ticking time bomb. Others speculate it could be an in-law, one of the wives who married into the family expecting a godly, righteous life, only to discover she had married into a syndicate of secrets. Whoever this defector is, legal theories suggest they are already in quiet negotiations with the Florida State Police, offering up a treasure trove of digital evidence in exchange for absolute anonymity and immunity. If these secret recordings exist, and if they prove that Jim Bob or other family members had prior knowledge of Joseph's 2020 incident, but actively chose to hide it, the conspiracy charges could theoretically bring down the entire patriarchy. And that alleged cover-up directly ties into the most baffling mystery of the Duggar empire. Where did all the TLC money actually go? For over a decade, the Duggars were one of the highest-paid families on reality television. We are talking about millions upon millions of dollars flowing directly into Jim Bob's pockets. But when Jill Duggar released her bombshell book, she exposed the terrifying reality that Jim Bob had hoarded almost all of it, manipulating his children into signing away their rights for pennies on the dollar. Now, with Joseph facing astronomical legal fees and Kendra facing her own terrifying charges, the financial reality is becoming incredibly dark. Exclusive insider theories suggest that Jim Bob is currently engaged in the most complex, desperate financial shell game of his life. Reports claim that in the years following Josh's conviction, Jim Bob realized that his family was highly vulnerable to massive civil lawsuits from victims. The theory is that Jim Bob has been frantically moving the remaining TLC millions into untraceable offshore accounts, obscure real estate land trusts, and fundamentalist ministry shell companies that operate entirely tax-free and are shielded from standard litigation. He allegedly starved his own children of their rightful earnings to build an impenetrable fortress of wealth that no lawyer could touch. But this extreme financial hoarding has allegedly created a massive vulnerability for Joseph. Insider reports claim that Jim Bob is holding Joseph's legal defense fund completely hostage. The theory is that Jim Bob has told Joseph and his legal team that he will only release the millions needed to fight these Florida charges if Joseph completely submits to Jim Bob's ultimate control over the narrative. Jim Bob allegedly wants to run Joseph's trial the exact same way he ran Josh's: deny everything, attack the victims, blame the media, and claim religious persecution. But Joseph's extremely expensive Florida attorneys are allegedly pushing back, screaming that Jim Bob's strategy is a guaranteed one-way ticket to federal prison. They know that trying to pull the persecuted Christian routine in a modern courtroom, especially with the ghost of Josh Duggar hanging over the family, is absolute legal suicide. This brings us to the terrifying reality of Kendra's situation, which might be the exact lever the prosecution uses to crack the entire family wide open. Kendra's charge of false imprisonment is the wild card that nobody saw coming. Exclusive legal theories surrounding the case suggest that the Florida prosecutors are not just looking to punish Kendra, they are actively trying to squeeze her until she breaks. The rumor is that the state is allegedly preparing to offer Kendra a highly controversial secret plea deal. The absolute mastermind strategy from the prosecution would be to offer Kendra immunity, or a severely reduced sentence that keeps her out of prison and with her children, on one massive, non-negotiable condition. She has to turn state's evidence and testify against Joseph and the Duggar family machine. Imagine the psychological warfare currently tearing Kendra apart. She was raised in the incredibly strict, brainwashing environment of the Institute in Basic Life Principles. She was taught from birth that her only purpose in life is to submit to her husband, to protect his reputation at all costs, and to never, ever speak out against the spiritual authority of the family patriarch. To accept a plea deal and testify against Joseph would be the ultimate unthinkable betrayal of everything she has ever been taught. It would mean total excommunication from her community, her church, and her entire support system. But on the flip side, insider reports suggest that Kendra is utterly terrified of losing her children. The false imprisonment charge carries heavy, mandatory minimums in certain jurisdictions. If she goes to trial alongside Joseph and loses, she goes to a state penitentiary, and her children are likely absorbed back into the massive, toxic Duggar compound under Jim Bob and Michelle's control, the exact same environment that allegedly created two predators. The exclusive theory is that Kendra is currently trapped in the most horrific prisoner's dilemma imaginable, and Jim Bob is allegedly doing everything in his power, including intense spiritual manipulation and threats of total financial ruin, to ensure she keeps her mouth shut and takes the fall. If Kendra flips, the entire Duggar defense strategy instantly disintegrates. And this is exactly why Josh Duggar's arrogant, narcissistic decision to release a public statement defending Joseph from federal prison is the most catastrophic blunder in reality television history. We have to look at how Josh's statement is going to be weaponized in a court of law. Legal theories predict that the Florida prosecution team was absolutely celebrating when they saw Josh's quote in the Daily Mail. By publicly aligning himself with Joseph, and by using the exact same language of false accusations and sensationalized fiction, Josh did the prosecution's job for them. When this case goes to trial, reports suggest the prosecution plans to paint a vivid, horrifying picture of an abuser's alliance. They will allegedly argue that Joseph's actions were not a momentary lapse in judgment, but the direct result of a calculated, deeply ingrained family culture of covering up sexual deviance. And what better proof of that culture than the family's most notorious convicted predator issuing a public endorsement from behind bars? If Joseph takes the stand to claim he is a righteous, innocent man who is simply misunderstood by a secular world, the prosecution will undoubtedly bring up his older brother. They will ask the jury, if Joseph is so innocent, why is his loudest character witness a man serving over a decade for the worst crimes imaginable against children? Josh's statement effectively linked his own undeniable, federally proven guilt directly to Joseph's current charges. He hammered the final nail into his younger brother's coffin out of pure, unadulterated hubris. Insider reports from within the federal prison system claim that Josh is completely oblivious to the damage he has caused. The exclusive theory is that Josh, sitting in his cell, still genuinely believes he is a master manipulator. He thinks he is playing 4D chess, trying to convince his remaining loyal followers that the government is just picking off Duggar men one by one in a coordinated attack against their faith. But the reality is that his statement has allegedly caused an absolute, irreparable fracture within the remaining family members who are not entirely brainwashed. The siblings who have already escaped, Jill, Ginger, and now potentially others who are quietly packing their bags, are reportedly watching this unfold with a mixture of profound grief and vindication. They have been trying to tell the world for years that the IBLP cult is incredibly dangerous, that it breeds a terrifying sense of male entitlement, and that it systematically crushes the voices of victims. Joseph's arrest, mirroring Josh's exact crimes, is the ultimate undeniable proof that the system is broken. Theories suggest that behind the scenes, these older siblings are desperately trying to stage interventions for the younger children still trapped on the compound, begging them to see the reality of what Jim Bob and Michelle have built. They are trying to pull them out of the burning building before the entire structure collapses into a pile of state and federal indictments. And what happens to Jim Bob and Michelle when the dust finally settles? The insider reports paint a portrait of a patriarch completely losing his grip on reality. The exclusive theory is that Jim Bob is currently pacing the halls of his massive, empty compound, furiously trying to figure out who he can still control. His political aspirations are dead. His television empire is dead. His legacy as a pioneer of the fundamentalist movement is permanently stained with the horrific crimes of two of his sons. The money is allegedly draining fast, and the absolute worst-case scenario is looming on the horizon. The possibility that the authorities might start looking directly at him. If the secret whistleblower's evidence proves that Jim Bob engaged in witness tampering, obstruction of justice, or financial fraud to cover up these crimes, the patriarch himself could be facing the inside of a courtroom. The tragic, poetic irony of this entire situation is that the Duggar family was built on the absolute promise of purity. They sold the world a fantasy. They wrote books, they gave seminars, and they charged thousands of dollars to teach other families how to raise perfect, godly children who would never fall into the traps of the secular world. But the theories and the very real police reports reveal that their intense, suffocating purity culture did not protect their children. It actively endangered them. It created an environment where predators could hide behind a Bible and a smile, knowing that their victims would never be believed and that their parents would spend millions to protect the family brand. Josh Duggar's pathetic attempt to throw Joseph a lifeline from a federal prison cell is the ultimate symbol of that failed ideology. It is a convicted abuser trying to use the language of victimhood to protect another accused abuser. It is a stunning display of hypocrisy that has officially shattered whatever tiny sliver of credibility the Duggar family had left. Instead of clearing Joseph's name, Josh just reminded every single person watching that the rot goes all the way down to the foundation. He reminded the world of his own horrific crimes, effectively sinking Joseph's defense before the jury was even selected. We are watching the real-time destruction of a reality television dynasty, brought down not by the media, not by false accusations, but by the absolute, undeniable consequences of their own deeply hidden darkness. The exclusive theories, the insider reports, the alleged secret plea deals, and the financial shell games are all converging into a single, catastrophic legal battle in Florida. And as Joseph sits waiting for his fate, and as Kendra wrestles with the most impossible decision of her life, the ghost of Josh Duggar continues to haunt the family he already destroyed. This saga is far from over, and the upcoming trial is going to expose secrets that Jim Bob has spent his entire life trying to bury. But right now, the court of public opinion is already rendering its verdict. Is Josh Duggar's defense the final nail in Joseph's coffin? Should Josh have just kept his mouth shut? Or was this a calculated, malicious move by a jealous brother who wants to watch his family burn with him? Let me know your exact thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Kendra will take a plea deal and flip on the family? Or will she stay brainwashed and go down with the ship? We need to get a massive discussion going on this because your voices are driving the narrative that the Duggars can no longer control. If you want to keep getting the absolute deepest dives, the exclusive theories, and the insider reports that the mainstream media is too afraid to touch, you have to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel immediately, ring that notification bell, and share this video with anyone who used to watch 19 Kids and Counting. The truth is finally coming out, and we are going to be right here to expose every single dark detail. Stay tuned, stay vigilant, and I will see you in the next shocking update.